All right, so I have started recording officially. Good morning. Today is the 23rd of May, 2024 already. We're going to continue to admit people and they'll just join as they can. So this is our May 2024 Federal Fiscal Grants Communities of Practice. So we're going to have some great discussions today. We're going to get started by glancing over the agenda. So we are going to start with our congratulations, our celebrations, shout outs. I've got a reflection and pause moment for us to take in today. A little bit of hot topics, news and legislation. A little bit of what's on your radar, because if you have not been looking at the data acquisition calendar, June is a nightmare. I'm so sorry, and I hope you guys can divide and conquer, but we're going to take a nice glance at that. We're going to do a very short recap of last month. So what we talked about in April. And we're going to talk a little bit about the federal programs and special ed allocations updates for you guys. I know everyone's been like, why haven't I gotten my IDEA numbers? Well, I will tell you what is going on there and what types of protections I'm trying to put in place for you guys, because we're going to talk about what happened with enrollment. And then we're going to do application reminders, because my goal is to today, for real this time, send out your IDEA allocations and then get that application open for you all. So, and then we'll talk about how that works also with the CFSGA timelines. Now, today, really, we're going to start diving into some of the actual changes of the Uniform Grant Guidance. And the premise behind that for you guys is to put this on your radar. What kind of changes are there? I'm kind of cherry picking at this point. Some of the ones that I know will actually apply to you guys, just so that you have an idea of some of the changes to your policy manuals that will need to be made. But our goal here is to finally actually make a nice little list for you guys so that everybody can make sure to make those adjustments. And also working in conjunction with other folks that put out policies that many of you adopt, to see if we can get some updates there or find some other resources to help you all, because that's a heavy lift. Okay, so again, we'll keep admitting folks, but let's just dive in. All right, so I am celebrating that we have estimates, or I'm saying estimates. These are our preliminary numbers. I'm celebrating. You haven't seen them yet, but I'm celebrating. So celebrate with me. You're going to get them today, at least from IDEA, and you guys are already working through some of the title funding ones as well, and others to come soon. All right, school's out for most of you guys this week, last week, next week. It's all over the board, but it is just about out, which is good. It's scary and bad and means close out and accrual time is coming and all those other things, but you guys are almost there. So let's still celebrate that. And then, hey, a lot of you guys were able to actually pass levies and bonds. So can we all just give a round of applause and a big shout out to Salmon, because this was monumental, and I know that's how they're all feeling there. So if you guys want to put some gold stars or something in the chat, or just know that the folks that were able, including Salmon, to pass those, that is a huge deal for those guys. Super excited for them and the changes that's going to bring to their district. You guys, I know those numbers to pass anything is exhausting and so difficult. So this is where I want to take time to have reflection and pause, because there's some things happening statewide, nationwide. Pandemic funding is just about gone, right? So we talked about this months ago, and pretty much every month, about the last of the ESSER 3 funding, and before that some of the other ESSER 2, ESSER 1, ARP money. All those things are pretty much gone now. Some schools are closing. There's a shift in the air, if you will. And there's some difficult budget decisions happening right now. And the reason I'm bringing these up is because those often can lead to a reduction in force if you guys do not have any sort of set-asides for those things, contingencies. And I'm not talking about the last effort contingency, and we're talking about a lot of carryover and things that can help save you these, as these monies go away. So this is something that's exhausting for folks right now. Everybody's been like doing a lot of scenarios, doomsday, this and that. It's like, well, we don't know, because we haven't closed out the year. And if our carryovers are this low, we might not need to, cut another position, or those people's livelihoods, jobs, that's their career for some of them. So we know that these are very, very, very difficult decisions that you guys are making. And again, part of the delay, and I apologize, but part of my delay on my end for IDEA funding is taking a look at what is happening and why were there drops, and is there any way I can try and help people out? Was there a better data set that I could use? Do I have all the child nutrition data as up to date as I can? Did I use the right population against it? All those pieces, I tried myself probably 18 different scenarios to see how to hold everybody in the best sense that I could. So just know that when there's delays, or when there's maybe even an adjustment, if we had to make an adjustment, and there will be adjustments as nuances come in, that just know that we are reflecting with you here, because we know that if we cut any dime to a certain line item in budget, that's a change from this year to next year. And that could be someone's livelihood, and that could be a teacher in your school or a paraprofessional or anybody else. So just know that we are thinking about that. Constantly it's on our minds, because we want to hold you guys as harmless as possible anywhere we can. If it's, a federal formula that drives something, I can't change it, but maybe there's some other mechanism or better something that I can apply to make that less of a hardship for folks. Okay, so just know that we are reflecting and pausing with you, and we know there's hard decisions being made. Now, not a lot of topics here, but I do want to kind of just reflect. These are some different sources at the bottom here. From Idaho Ed News did some nice reporting, Idaho Capital Sun, actually Boise State, and Idaho Statesman also. All over the state, regional good reporting that has happened. Bonds are difficult to pass because they're sometimes larger, but some of the plant facility levies even passed. And then a lot of the supplemental levies made it. So these are good things to celebrate. And some of these were won by just a handful. So your vote matters, voting matters. And I know you guys have been pushing that messaging to constituents in your communities. And this is a huge community win for a lot of you all. So that's really the big news for us, I think. So at the bottom bullet here too, there's some Republican primaries that resulted in a lot of incumbent losses, and some of those were tied to education leadership. So there's a lot of news reporting out there, and I would encourage everybody to get familiar with what that might mean for the next year for education and different legislation, just so that we can think about how that might change the landscape going forward into next year on the state side. But again, for everybody who was able to pass one, good for you guys. And then for those of you who didn't, I know you guys are all scrambling. And again, you're going to do what you need to, and there's possibly some decisions that are not going to be fun to make. So, we're thinking of you guys, and let us know things that we can do to help support you. Now, before we get into what's your radar, I didn't give an update on the federal side because there's a slight one that I'll give in a few minutes, but there's a lot happening, but it's a lot of back and forth, a lot happening with Title IX reform right now, and some of the states that have joined those lawsuits. So just know that we are watching that very closely. When there's more of an actual impact that we can report to you, we will. But I say this just for you guys again, it's good to follow those things. If you can, keep an eye on them in the news, because you guys are getting ready to certify these applications for federal dollars. And currently, Title IX new changes are not in place. And we talked about this last month. So you're going to certify that you have everything in place according to the current ruling right now for this new fiscal year's funding. Going forward this year, there's going to be a whole bunch of changes that will happen. We'll be watching with you is the messaging, and we'll try and keep you updated. And I know that our department here, Department of Ed, will make some announcements throughout the year, how that may affect you guys, and just in Idaho in general. So let's talk about the data acquisition calendar this month, because it is on fire. So normally you'll see that by department, I filtered in and out some different things. It looks like on this slide, special education is, this was last month for May, was really hogging a lot of line items. There was a lot due, in other words, but I had filtered mostly on the federal programming for the slides for May. So hopefully you were able to get all those in. We're on the 23rd, so this was the first piece. Here's the last piece. So there's still a couple of things that you guys need to get done before the end of the year, including those school calendars that I left the public school finance open on here because that one, we don't want y'all to forget about that one. There's, the data collections, hopefully that were earlier in the month you've done. If you had forgotten anything, please, please, please reach out to the person that is listed so that we can see if there's anything we can do to take a late submission. Significant disproportionality was the last one that was on this list, and that's specific to special ed. So if you in the last day got a letter from us, you will have some things being explained to you. No news is good news, but this is about over identification of student populations and demographics. So we just want to let you know that we're here to support you if you did get that letter. Okay, now let's actually get into July, or not July, June. What's coming up in June? June is the big crazy, as I call it. There's so much there. I actually still filtered, but there's some on here I just wanted to bring up because there's a lot going on. We talk here about, if you'll notice on the 15th, it says that the preliminary applications are due. Well, as you guys know, I haven't given you the applications yet. So that date will change, but I couldn't change the data acquisition calendar. So when I send out the announcement and actually open it up, you'll notice you get a little bit more time than that to finish up. But that's again, when you guys are going to apply and say, yes, I want the money. Here's a legitimate budget so that we can certify you to start spending on July 1st, even though it's preliminary and there's going to be some tweaks to the allocations. So consider those things. There's more submissions that are due for McKinney-Vento students. So again, very specific districts sometimes only apply for some of these data components that we collect for like the Indian education and so on. But anyway, we want to make sure that you guys are thinking about it. I am talking about it. We're going to glance over a few more, just that you guys, this is just a little overlap of last month, but I had unfiltered the final day to do those Form 10S for the July 15th payment. That was a school finance one that I unfiltered to be able to show here. Just really, really want to make sure you guys aren't missing some of these very, very, very time sensitive data submissions. Now, the second part of the month, there's some early childhood transition data collections. There's other IC data collections for special ed specifically, and I'm hogging this forum for that because I'm in special ed, but there's a lot going on. So if you want to, the other reasoning for us talking about this is if you look at the department, when you go to that department column, you can just filter on the specific department. You could look for, is it a federal or a state? Maybe that determines whose role is going to need to do that. So just make sure that you are looking at that so that you can find what you might be in charge of at your district. Now, some of the other pieces coming through about 60-day timelines and so on and so forth for special education. Again, more McKinney-Vento. There's a couple different submissions this month. So if you're in charge of that and you're a federal program director, beware, beware. There's a lot this next month. So divide and conquer where you can. And then we even have those English language learner data collections coming on at the end. So, and not to forget that consolidated federal and state grant application, right? So that's the CFSGA. You may have gone to those workshops. Again, our goal there is to have you guys get those in so that we can certify you guys to start spending authority. It's like give us a budget, we'll approve it for you to have that appropriation to be able to spend. With more adjustments to come after that. But gosh, you guys, there's a lot in here. Look at, there's career ladder stuff. So this might be 5 people at your district and you might be the lucky one that gets to do it all. That's why we talk about it. So don't forget, here's a whole second page of just the 30th that's due. So don't delay. If there's any of this you guys can close out or report on or gather sooner, please, please, please do. Okay. Recapping April.
There was one quick question.
Yeah, let's stop and take a question really quick. And Elijah, why don't you go ahead and read that for me?
Sure. When will the 24-25 acquisition calendar be available?
They are gathering departmental. So the question was, when is that new acquisition calendar going to be out? I know that they're working on it right now because they're asking all of us in our departments here when that, was there any change to a date, to a person who's in charge? I know they want to have that posted as soon as possible. So if I can get some more updates and details on that, I will share it with you. Hopefully I'll have that answer in the next week. I know school finance usually is the one that spearheads that, so I will reach out and find that out for you guys. All right. So let's dive into reminders from last month. We've been talking a lot. We've been talking a lot about the funding that's going away. So this was a reminder from last month. No tidings waivers on some of these things. Okay. There's not extensions that's going to happen. No late liquidations. So please just remember that it's over when it's over. It's going to be over in September, right? So just please remember that we're not able to apply for those. And so the September 30th was the last one that we know of right now. Okay. So make sure that you're going to have those closed out, that you'll be able to do final drawdowns within the right window of time. If you guys have more questions about that, you can help reach out to the ESEA team here. But we just want to make sure that stays on your radar, that if you guys are doing final budgeting right now and you have that little tiny snippet of carryover, what's the plan? Right? This is what I said too, and we had our final art money. What's the plan? Is it actually happening? We don't want to leave money on the table. I know you don't want to leave money on the table. So just make sure that you have that well thought out and planned. Now, application dates. My IDEA application is hopefully going to open tomorrow. Fingers crossed, all the data that I give through is going to come through accurately to open up for you. And I'll send out a separate announcement. I know you're all just itching to get in there. But basically this whole first application, remember, this is where you say, yeah, I want the funds. Please give me the money. This is where we have you do an eligibility test. Am I eligible for new funds for IDEA? This is specific to special ed here. Did I pass this eligibility test? And what that really means is, am I budgeting at least as much as I've spent before in the maintenance of effort? Remember, guys, that's just what are you spending on special ed out of your general funds, state and local dollars, right? That's that threshold that you have to continue to maintain. So when you budget, you're saying, yeah, I'm going to budget to continue to maintain that number, okay? This is your best guess of what's happening right now. You guys, I always go kind of just joke with y'all. It kind of feels like a garbage budget because you're not done spending this year. So you don't know what your carryover is. This is just, how would you potentially spend this new money, right? That's the budget. Yes, I want it. Here's my potential budget to start with. So when you guys are doing that preliminary application, it won't show any carryover yet for me, for my application. Okay. So special ed's application, it's just going to be on the new line item. Now, in July, we flip it over to what's called the final application. So that reminder, that one's not due until the 15th of November. And it's very different, because this is when you're going to report to me on how you actually spent money to close out this current fiscal year, because that's going to determine your carryover. Okay. So as you guys are closing out, you're doing all your accruals this summer, you're getting ready for audit. When you're done and close and have the real numbers, you're going to report them, determine your carryovers for the grants, and that you'll rebudget. So that's when your budget really needs to get trued up. It needs to be meaningful. It needs to be realistic, and you need to update your own ledgers to match. Okay. It's one of our findings we give out often when we're doing monitoring, is that there's a large carry forward and it's not captured anywhere in your ledger budgets. Well, guess what you give to your board? You're giving reports out of the ledger to show what your funds available are and so on, and where your spending is. So you need to be transparent. So when you're updating those budgets to the applications and you see there's carryover from the GRA from a prior year, update your ledger budget. Okay. Working budgets are necessary, and they are in code that we need to have that transparency for accurate reporting as well. So again, that is in July. Right now, we're worried about, do you want the money? We're going to open this sucker up. You're going to say, yep, I'm going to budget enough for maintenance of effort. I'm going to budget my first layer. It's going to feel like garbage, but that's what I'm thinking for now. It's a legitimate way to spend it. I'm saying I'm special, it's for specialized, whatever that's specific to my grant, knowing that you can make adjustments later when things are more meaningful. Okay. So This afternoon, allocations will go out. Tomorrow, the application will open. So that's when you guys can get in there and start messing around with that. And the great news is that we just this week have our new financial specialist started. So he's going to be here as well to help with those questions. And I'll send out his contact information. His name's Elijah Stern. So we want to have a warm welcome for him. He's going to be so instrumental to you guys. Okay, just a reminder, there's a link and that you'll be able to if you don't have the right role when you go to get into those applications, whether it's CFSGA or my IDEA application, you have to have the right user role in IC to be able to get in there and be a registered user to be able to get into those applications. So if you're the new business manager and you're like, I have view only, what's wrong? This is what you need to do. You need to contact these folks, or if you can't get it done, send us an email. We'll try and help facilitate that. Now, again, we're still just reviewing last month, right? We talked in general last month about uniform grant guidance, okay? We talked about the final updates were out, and we talked about how Office of Management and Budget revealed those regulations. They're trying to maximize impact. They're trying to make, plain language so that people can understand what everybody's asking. And really the reflection on all this is that federal grants and grant management guidance needs to be easy to understand, or people aren't going to use the funds right, and then there might be payback and those things. So they're trying to make sure that it might seem like it's bureaucracy or whatever, but they're just trying to make it more user-friendly. Okay, make it more transparent, make it more meaningful. It's the plumbing, they call it the plumbing of the financial system. And it matters. It matters that we know how to use things. So that's really why these things are happening. We had some links to it and just reminders that there are trillions of dollars going out, and that's a lot of money. So these efforts are really there to try and help, make it less burdensome, make it so that we can read it and know what we're supposed to do. It's that cutting of the red tape. Just to remind you, there's links in here if you really want to read the details. But really, this effort is a long time coming. Here, I'm looking at the scissors, guys. But really, it's a long time coming, you guys, because they want to make it easier for us. So we're thankful. Okay, we're thankful. Now, let's talk about some of the changes in the allocations this year. I'm again sorry that mine are late. You already have had that very first preliminary federal program Title 1A grant allocation. So those were distributed for you guys to be able to get in and start those CFSGA applications and budgeting process. But remember, these are always preliminary, because what's happening right now is we're finding out that somebody erroneously reported something, and that skews everything, right? So that'll be adjustment one. Then we find out somebody was missing, or somebody fat-fingered some data, right? So those types of things. Or what's happening right now is we also have our new charters that are opening that may not have wanted the funds. And so we have to calculate some of those initially, but then they say they don't want those funds, right? They don't, for my scenario for special ed anyway, we might have a new charter and they just got all their enrollment and they decide that they don't have any special ed students, so they don't want to take the federal grant money. That's about $140,000 worth of one grant that I can suck back if certain people don't want it, right? So I have some things pending as well. I've been reaching out, trying to get those adjustments in before I send out my prelims, but I need to just get them out there for you guys to start budgeting. So what does that mean? They're subject to modification, okay? So I know there's a board meeting happening in July for an existing charter that also didn't take it last year, but in June they'll vote, but it's too late for me to do it now, which means I will take that money back when they say they don't want it, and I'll reincorporate it and redistribute it to everybody. So those numbers will be adjusted, okay? So just know that we make them advantageous to you. We don't try to pull back more money for us. We are trying to push it back to you so that we make sure you guys have more funds available, okay? Now, specific to special ed, again, I'm hogging the forum today, but we received $30,000 less this year, okay? So we received a very, very late allocation too. All of the states did. And when they sent the tables out, they were wrong. And then we had to wait again. So some of the reasoning was that on the why we got less, we actually, all states got a little bit more inflation adjustments and other components, but each year annually. All states will have, some districts don't meet maintenance of effort. Some states don't meet their state level effort. And if they have to send, funds back, or they're having funds taken away from their allocations at the state level, then those monies can get reincorporated and redistributed to other states. So they did give out more money, but there was less that came in than the prior year from that redistribution. So we technically came in 30,000 less than last year, which seems weird, but it's because of the redistributed funds that didn't come in. Now, enrollment. I got to talk about enrollment with you guys. When I send out the email this year for IDEA anyway, I'm giving you a different comparison column because I'm going to tell you that there was a lot of enrollment shifts, and I actually thought the data was messed up. I've run it so many times and double checked everything, but there's a lot of enrollment movement. So you guys should know this. When I told you earlier in the year to budget flat, it was for a reason. I said budget flat because I knew my allocation for the state would come in flat. However, I've been giving the caveat, if your enrollment changed, I use this year's enrollment to calculate for next year because I don't have next year's enrollment yet, right? So if the enrollment went down from last fall, right, to the prior year, you're going to see that drop. And I have given you columns to see that. What was last year's enrollment? What was the fall enrollment? And how much did it go up or down? And the reason I'm telling you this is because for IDEA calculations, 85% of that calculation is driven by total student enrollment, okay? Total, not sped kids, total enrollment. And the other piece, the 15%, comes from low income. Now, many schools saw shifts, okay? And I haven't seen it like this. Like I said, I thought it was wrong, but there's a shift, there's a move, okay? So what else affects? Just again, when we open up the allocations, I do a data collection in the spring that says, oh wait, we're opening some new charter schools, or we're expanding and adding grades and those types of things. I have to collect the estimates for the fall, and that's going to inflate the total enrollment for the whole state, because those kids are being estimated at a new school, but they're also embedded somewhere in an existing school from that enrollment data that I collected. So I've got a couple hundred extra students that are kind of being double counted. So that's kind of inflating, which really kind of it makes everybody's sliver a little bit smaller, if that makes sense. So just know that when I adjust those in the fall, there's going to be probably some changes, and hopefully that will benefit you, right? Because I'm going to be saying, oh, wait, they can't exist here and here, right? So just know that those changes will be coming. Now, let's talk also about the changes in the dynamics of our low-income population, because I also made you comparison columns for that because I also thought that was wrong. But this is child nutrition data that is reported, and let's think about our populations, okay? And let's think about the enrollment shifts. We've got private schools, home schools, public schools that are online schools. So this also attributes to this change that we're seeing in enrollment, and who's moving to our state, all these different pieces. So this is where I want to talk to you guys about some of those other pieces that are not just shifteroo, okay? So it's not just I went from a standard district to a charter, or a standard district to a private school. We're seeing some declining birth rates, right? Housing prices are up. It might be less affordable for some in some areas. Gentrification might be happening in some boundaries. What about the demographics here? Who's moving here? Are these people that are retired and trying to stretch their pensions or their retirement funds because it's less expensive here than California, but they don't have school-age children maybe? So all those things affect the allocations we get on some of our total grants because of total state low income rates and so on and so forth. So all of those different pieces could play into the big pie and your own little slice of the pie for what's happening in your own area. And you guys, I know this isn't that much news to most of you. You've been seeing this. Maybe some of you are tracking birth rates annually and forecasting 5 years out to see how many potential kindergartners you'll have. So some districts are doing that, right? But why is this important, and why is Lisa on her soapbox right now? Well, it's because final budgets are getting adopted, right? So when I send these out, if you're one of the folks that are losing a chunk of money and you've got to redistribute, doomsday, or whatever you might have to re-scenario for your board for final adoption of a budget, that's going to prompt questions. So you guys have to be able to verbally and visually likely be able to demonstrate these changes, answer constituent questions that might pop up, right? What about those final union or other contract negotiations that you might have for some other miscellaneous services? Staffing estimates, contract renewals, all those might need to be adjusted if your allocations are drastically lower or even a little lower, because every dollar is counting right now. We know this. So that's why it's important. That's why I'm on my soapbox. That's why we're talking about it on our community today, because I know it's affecting you. Um, and I just want to pause. Is there anything that anyone else had this big aha moment, right? Um, that they want to put in the chat or come off mute? One that I'm thinking about is who's left at the district when, what kind of population is there? Are all of a certain type of student leaving? Who's left? Where are those students going? If I'm a charter school and I add a grade, who's coming? What kind of population I have here? Where are they coming from my online schools? So does anybody else have a aha moment or something that they want to share? I pause a little. I've got Elijah watching my chat. So I want you to think about those things, even if it's later and you want to email somebody or call somebody and get on the horn and say, hey, this is what's happening in my district. It's meaningful. We want to share those things out. But I know that when you do your final adoption, it still kind of feels loosey-goosey because you haven't determined carryover, right? So that's still your best guess, stab in the dark, right? Here's what we think right now in this moment. But no one wants to have to go out for a supplemental budget. It's great when you got more money, but no one wants to shift anything else around either if it's drastically different. So, I've been in your shoes. I know that that is something that's difficult. Now, let me give you a little bit of positive, maybe positive. Again, specialized money is going to be coming out here soon. We offer annually some sort of a mini grant. And this year, there's some changes to the special education SLD evaluation criteria. SESTA, which is our special education technical assistance support team, the folks that go out and train to help you guys out in the schools, they're going to do 7 regional trainings. But we know you guys might need some money to get there, right? So we're going to be doing some mini grants coming out here soon. We are sending as much as we can out at this time. It's going to be kind of like those restraint and seclusion grants. It was seed money to get somebody trained or to get somebody on board or a couple people there to bring it back to your own LEA and then formalize some sort of plan to make sure that you make those adjustments, right? So LEAs this time are going to get funding based on the size, right? The total population. And then we'll use that to support things like extra duty off contract time if you need to go on a different day to go to those. What if I need a substitute cost? Didn't have that budgeted. What about travel cost? All those things will be allowable to get you to those trainings because that's something that's on us. It was something that we had as a finding, and we need to address it, and we need to make sure we help support you guys to make those changes as well. So hopefully we will get the total grants announced in June and available July 1st for a full year. These are also going to be in the SPED mini grant Fund 265 for you guys so that you keep it separated. They're still IDEA funds. These are not state monies. So you still need to make sure that you're following generalized uniform grant guidance, okay? Now, speaking of those mini grants, anybody still out there that had a restraint and seclusion little mini grant for professional development costs? If you have that, it was to address that House Bill 281 from a couple years ago to make sure that you train staff and that you have the requirements to also have an adoption of a policy around restraint and seclusion. So this is again another reminder, the school year is almost over. Did you guys adopt the board policy to say that we are adhering to the changes that had come out of those House bills? And if you still have funds available, because I just looked in there's still 300 and some odd thousand that has not been drawn down. So if it's sitting in a fund somewhere as an expense to you, please draw it down, okay? Please draw it down. Now, let's go into the uniform grant guidance. Changes are coming, right? We know that they're coming. We know that they're here. And we need to make sure that you guys are aware. So the standards that are coming through are really very, very specific. Some of them are nuanced changes, but we want to make sure that you guys know that they're real and they're happening. Here's OMB's memo. And they're saying, yep, October 1st. October 1st. So all this date on the second piece here, May 15th has passed. So all the federal agencies submit all their plans. Here's how we'll make sure that, to the state level, we're implementing it. And that means the states now here, us here, Department of Ed are like, okay, we also got to get ready because we need to make sure that you guys will be able to adopt changes. So on October 1st, I'm not expecting everybody, and no one here is expecting everybody to know everything under the sun and have all their policies and procedures updated and ready to go and in force. That's not what we're expecting, but we're saying that is the starting date of a federal fiscal year. So funds that will be made available from appropriated congressional dollars that go to fund like IDEA or title and so on and so forth that we will give to you this time next year, right? The July 2025 new monies for that fiscal year, that is going to be where all of these things have to be applied, right? For the use of funds and those types of things. So we're going to need to get some sort of something in place. So we're going to start talking on these forums and try to have a recapping with a full listing of all changes that we think are applicable to you guys to make for your own policies and procedures. But we want to start talking about it. So let's be prepared, guys. That's what this forum's about. Let's be prepared. One of the things I felt good about was a new thing that talked about how subrecipients have to certify whenever they're requesting payment. And we have to make sure that you guys are doing this. But guess what? You already do. We already have this built in. So this is a good thing for us. So that's one thing that I don't have to worry about and that you're already attesting to. Same thing when you guys apply for funds. You guys notice when you finally hit submit, it says, I attest or I certify I have the right authority and I'm going to do this, that, and the other. That's why we built these in to our applications like CFSGA and the IDEA application and the GRA. The screenshot on the right here is from the GRA. So we're already doing that. Yay. Okay, the next one that they really drilled down on is this mandatory disclosures. Okay, so whenever there's what they're defining as credible evidence, and yet they don't really define it that well for us, credible evidence of some sort of violation of a federal crime of some sort for fraud, waste, abuse, conflict of interest, bribery, all those pieces, they're really drilling down on how the onus is on us that we have to be mandatory reporters, right? So how did it change? Well, they started looking at the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the FAR. How were they dealing with this for government contractors? And so they're really trying to align those nuances and make them more of the same. So that's what OMB is doing. So they're actually citing the FAR Council guidance to say this is what we're going to do to help decide what's credible, to make sure that we're disclosing. So what does it include? Well, so glad you asked, right? So it has to be in writing, right? And you may have to report it to the Office of Inspector General and to the pass-through, which would be me here, us at the state, whoever's giving you the grant funds, to report it to us in writing, right? And you're required to report something that is, involves the integrity and the performance of the grant. Some of those things. Sometimes we just thought it was if you knew someone stole something. Now it could be anything from defective pricing to, that contract, that was a conflict of interest. That was Susie's cousin that they hired for that, right? So really, it's important for us to understand these things because you guys are required, as am I, if I think I find something. So that means too, when I'm doing monitoring or when we're doing monitoring and we find actual fraud, waste, abuse, or credible evidence of something that was incorrect, we have to report. And that aligns with the credible evidence language that's part of the False Claims Act. And you guys, a year or so ago, we did a whole training on the False Claims Act, right? Any activities on or subawards in connection with the main federal award, that's what we're talking about. And if you don't report it, and we know you knew about it, that's a finding of noncompliance as well. And that goes for me too here, us too at the state, right? If OMB comes and audits us and says, hey, you knew this was happening and you didn't do anything about it. So that's what that means. So everybody's question was, okay, well, great. You're telling us credible evidence. Well, how are you defining that? So they actually referred to Black's Law Dictionary, and that definition is evidence that is worthy of belief. And is it trustworthy evidence, right? So it can't just be speculation, right? It needs to be some sort of credibility behind what you are assuming, right? And you're reporting. So we don't want this to be a tattletale based on, it's a rainy Tuesday and it looks like, they use too many napkins. That's not what this is, right? So we're trying to make sure that there's some good credibility behind it. And I have a link to some of the language that I have taken in some of these slides. It was a really good read by some other law folks. So let's recap what that False Claims Act was, because it's been a while since we trained on it. And does anybody even remember what it is? It's from 1863. Remember, this is the one when it was about the Civil War and the guns and who had stolen and reporting. So long story short, nowadays, as of February in 2024, there's a lot higher penalties than there were way back in the day. And those penalties can range from $13,946 all the way up into the $20,000 range per evidence, right? So these violations, right? So they're mandatory for each different section of what you can find. So this whole premise, it's allowing citizens are students, citizens are parents, citizens are teachers, other admin staff, program directors, whoever else it might be, procurement folks. We're all held to this, okay? So it's allowing citizens to report, okay? So that is looping in with those other protections of mandatory disclosure that is specific to federal funding. Now, establishing whistleblower protections kind of is also in line too, right? We have this new whole section that we haven't had before that they've dialed it in, and it's in the section 200-217. So it's a better way for us to realize and recognize there are protections that we need to make sure our folks know about are in place, so that they know that they can't retaliate against these reportings, okay? So that's a new one that everyone's gonna have to adopt. And here's the language, okay? So if there's an employee or recipient or subrecipient, you cannot, then they've reported, as a whistleblower, you can't demote them. I mean, it is defined here, right? If they have a reasonable belief that evidence of that mismanagement or whatever, even if it doesn't come to fruition and it wasn't actually real, you still can't retaliate. And so these pieces must be posted. You'll have to inform your employees in writing. You'll need to have some adoptions of this language. And these are new. They weren't there and they weren't just modified. These guys are new. So these are some of the ones that we will have to put on a listing for you guys to make sure that you know what they are, so you'll get them adopted eventually with your board. Let's talk about indirect, because we had touched on this when I had been reading some of the preliminary numbers, but now they're real. So these ones didn't change from what they had proposed. But really, it's at your discretion, but you guys can now include the first $50,000 of a subaward that you may have, that you've subawarded out, where it used to be 25,000, right? So some of these numbers will affect what you can claim or not claim, or if you use a de minimis rate, but usually that's not you guys. You guys have to have school finance. You submit all the data to them. But think about this. What are some other ways the indirect cost rate could change before I go forward? If you have more items that you are charging for an indirect cost rate, that's more money that you might have to pull back into your business office or those other services. And the thresholds have changed. So that might affect what you're charging, right? We'll talk about that when we talk about purchasing here in just a moment as well. Now let's talk about cybersecurity. That's another brand newbie. They added this one, and it came in under internal controls. Now, we have known here at the state annually, we hear this district got hacked, they lost a whole year, they had to build it back from paper copies, and it's been a nightmare. You guys, hackers are going after school information systems. They're going after accounting systems. They're going after all kinds of crazy stuff. So internal control language specific to cybersecurity has been added. Okay, so those are things that you'll have to also adopt. And you guys need to have, separation of duties between folks, in some sort of an internal control. But you also now have to list that we also have some sort of cybersecurity mechanism in place to protect student data and to protect other financial data, right? So you don't want your bank accounts to get hacked, those things. And they require that you take what they call reasonable. So what's reasonable for you might not be the same as West Ada or Boise, who maybe have a lot more things spread out. So reasonable to you, but that's something you'll have to have defined in a policy, okay? So it's our goal to help you guys figure out the best ways to do that. But that's a brand new one that's got to be adopted. Now, let's talk about the single audit, right? You guys hate the single audit, but that means you've had in prior year, you've had $750,000 or more in federal grant money, and that meant that you were subject to a single audit. It means you had to pay your CPA auditor more money to analyze or audit a program, one of the federal programs each year. Well, the feds raise it to $1 million. So as your pandemic money is going away, maybe you don't qualify for one anymore. You don't have to have one, right? Well, good for you, bad for me, because now I deem you more high risk because no one's looking at it. So think about that though. The OMB has really determined that they're going to follow the consumer price index, and they're going to every couple of years, hopefully trigger some updates to these numbers. They can do it as often every 2. They haven't done it in a lot longer than that. But this could be good news if a lot of our smaller districts are now going to be under $1 million in those expenditures annually for federal funds. So as you guys are closing out, you're going to be like, did we make it? So maybe that'll help save you guys some money because you won't have to have one this year. So good for you guys. Now, let's talk about equipment, and I'm going to tie it back to indirect costs. They changed the threshold for equipment for what they deem equipment, not supplies or other consumable type of or supplies and materials, from 5,000 to 10,000. Now, this is federally. You would have to make a change to your own district or LEA policies, right? To be able to apply this. But if you think about it, typically you didn't apply indirect cost to equipment, right? But now, if you raise that threshold and now it's $10,000, that means, other supplies and materials that were under that would be subject to indirect cost. Okay, so that could be a good or a bad thing for you guys. So just think about if you decide to adopt a different policy to follow some of these more lenient numbers, that might affect some other calculations internally. So if you guys make an internal policy change, educate your programs, because if you let them know that, there might be more costs that are subject from your spending on these consumables, for instance, that are subject to indirect costs, make sure they're aware of that. Because everything affects everything else, right? So that's something to think about. Another big one we want to talk about are residual inventory. So they changed the language here to be an aggregate total exceeding $10,000. That's what they consider unused or residual inventory. And they're talking about it's the aggregated value of unused supplies, consistence of the same, all types, not just like items and supplies. So that was new language that came in. So what does that mean? Does that mean, what do you mean that everyone needs to do inventory, but you may or may not have been tracking this. So you need to make sure that you have tracked this to see if there's anything else that's subject to selling or retaining those interests, okay? And with those interests comes something called the disposition piece. So they have increased from 5,000 to 10,000 the value of the equipment at the end of a grant period that could be retained or sold or otherwise disposed of. So it's a higher value. But some of the big language changes that they had talked about how you have to actually request disposition, right? So you have to say, okay, Idaho Department of Ed, my ESSER funds are over and I have this nice piece of equipment. I'd like to sell it. So you have to request permission to be able to do that. But you guys can now retain $1,000 of costs associated with the selling of those pieces, right? So there's a couple of different pieces that are new. So as you guys go through equipment and things that you've bought that you may not need to retain, that's going to be something that's slightly different. Also, inventory procedures are a little bit different. How you guys manage the equipment, including replacing it. You need some sort of procedures that will define who is managing and responsible for it, and if there's a change in the location or the status of the property. Was it damaged? You need to report that to your pass-through. Ooh, that's me. So I bought this with ESSER, or I bought this with IDEA van. We used special ed money and bought a special ed van and then it got totaled in an accident. I need to know that. Okay, so I need to take note of that for disposition and other damaged type of a scenario. Okay. Another one that is related to procurement was conflict of interest. So the rest of this language was the same. You need to have written standards of conducting and covering your conflict of interest, and you guys have policies and procedures, especially if you have adopted that 7,000 series of ISBA's policies. But they add something. They add board members. Okay, they literally add the verbiage. It includes those guys now. So that's something you need to adopt by your board, right? So that there's no conflicts there with anything happening between board members as well, or something that might be advantageous or considered a conflict. So that needs to be adopted. Now, you guys, we have 8 minutes left. There was a lot of me talking at you. I want to reiterate that there are a lot more changes than this. But we want to put some of these on your radar now so that you guys can think internally, it might warrant us making a change on our purchasing to allow for these things. And if so, start planning. Who's going to need to be on that group that helps decide, to take it to the board, to tell the story why you want to do it. And again, any change you make like that, how is that going to affect the indirect? If we even have one, maybe this is the time to adopt indirect because of these changes, right? We want to go out for it now so we can claim it on these federal grants, right? Because it costs money to administer these suckers. I mean, it does. Every time you go do a drawdown, that takes time from someone in the finance office who's literally going through and scooping it up, making sure it's cost allowable, following up to see if there's some nuance that they need a journal entry out. All of that takes time and effort from somebody that is doing that work. So those are conversations that may be difficult if you've never charged indirect at your district or at your charter. So those are things you want to think about. But I would just encourage you guys to think amongst yourselves, reach out to us to see what are some of those other pieces that maybe you hadn't thought about. And as we think about changes here to uniform grant guidance, what would be most helpful to you guys? I'm thinking a summary list, right? What is it? Do I just want a one-sheeter that says change CFR, 2 CFR 200, 217 or whatever it is? Do you want the language itself in there so you can copy and paste it into whatever your policies are? So those types of feedback are so important to us because as we're doing the hunting and gathering for you for the things we think are applicable, we want you to make sure that, you have a good way to then implement it as well. So we're also reaching out to partner agencies like ISB to see if they're going to update policies. We're going to see if there's something we can do on our end to just say we have adopted the additions, something like that, and then maybe everyone goes and makes their manuals better later. I've got some feedback coming in. Yeah, we like the one-pager idea. Guys, I hate, when there's like 600 pages of changes in the uniform grant guidance, but not everything, not everything is gonna come in. Somebody was asking also about if we're gonna make some decisions around the 60-day timeline. I'm not going to comment on that. You're going to have to get that from China Hirosaki on the timing of how that initial evaluation ruling is. So hang tight to hear more if you haven't been on those webinars to learn about how that might be affected for your district, to be making sure that you're following the law and getting folks evaluated in a timely manner. And I'm also getting some good feedback about send us the money. We have a good way to spend it. And I have another one that just came in about questions on allowable expenses. If SLPs, those are our speech language pathologists, charge a fee for traveling to and from, is that an allowable expense? Shoot me an email because I want to take a look at their contract, if it's a contractor or if it's an employee. So some of that may come into conflict, possibly, depending on, okay, it's a contractor. Yeah. So let me take a look at that with you offline. But all those nuances, those questions, make sure you ask them. If you send stuff to me and it's for Title I, I'm not going to get mad. I'll just walk across the hall and find the person that needs to go to. Because things like this question we just had, those are about specifics to maybe one position type or one contractor type, but they might need to also make sure what are your overall LEA policies say, right? And I've got many of us will need to answer on that one, which I think might be regarding either the 60-day timeline or the SLP travel piece. And you guys, if you want to shoot me emails, we can actually have a Q&A that we sent out when I do the recap this time on communities of practice, SLP travel piece, yeah. And so anything that we can generalize to about if it's a contractor from their home versus an employee from their home, just to make sure that we get those dialed in for everybody that's generic enough to apply to varying funding streams. That's what this is about. And again, I want to take all the feedback on, I got that one about, yeah, I want a one pager. What were the changes and what numbers were they? So I can just go update my own manual. If there's something else specific, I want to know what it is. So I'm still watching as the chat's coming in, but what I want to know here is about making sure you guys know how to contact us. When you're on the Idaho Department of Ed page, you can look at special education contact numbers, right? And you can also look at the federal program folks. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to contact us. There's a lot of people to contact. But again, if you just know that one person you trust, call that one person. Okay, because we can just walk across the hall and find that person and help find that answer for you. So with that, I think we're going to get ready to wrap. And again, I've seen some good comments coming in, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. When I send out allocations today, you guys, feel free to call me one-on-one. That's what we're here for. We want to work through the data, and just know that those are always preliminary and subject to making adjustments as errors are discovered and so on and so forth. So you guys, thanks again. And we look forward to the recap and the link being sent out today on those allocations. And you guys have a great day and stay super.